Scott was a weird guy. I think obviously because he had so many demons, so many problems, but that was one guy I fucking hated him in WCW. Did not like him at all. Kind of a bully. And, you know, just very arrogant and just a dick. It's like, you know, his big quote is, this is the wrestling business, not the wrestling friendness. I don't need any friends.
Right.
It's like, I just didn't like him because he wasn't nice to me. But then, you know, you would see him at a certain time or a certain place, and he'd be a sweetheart. So I think he had a lot of issues and a lot of problems. And he's a drug addict. He's an alcoholic. You can never judge anybody based on that. I wish him nothing but the best. I hope that he can turn his life around, or that he has turned his life around. I'll tell you one thing. You know, I've never talked to Kevin Nash ever on the phone, but when Scott almost died and I heard that Kevin flew out there to, you know, try and make him live, I called Kevin. I was like, you know, hey, man, if there's anything I can ever do for Scott, let me know. Because, you know, we're all part of one big family, and there's some guys you don't like and some guys you had issues with. And, you know, but still, I don't want to see a guy die because of it. I remember he was always such a bully to me that at one point Scott Norton said, he said to me, listen, you don't go tell that guy to fuck off. I will beat your ass. And I'll tell you what, I'll watch your back. If you guys do anything or whatever, I got your back. And fucking Scott Norton got your back. I was like, that's all I need to hear. And I went over to him. I said, he's like, oh, what's up, Jericho? How's your little Terry Taylor push? I'll end that in a second. And I was like, that does it. And I said, you motherfucker. I said, you want to fucking fight? Let's fight right now. If you don't want to fight, shut your fucking mouth. Don't ever talk to me like that again. He's like, hey, man, I'm just ribbing you. You don't have to be so mean about it. And then after that, he was nice to me.
Well, the two things, I wanted to ask you two things out of that thing you just said. One, what was your opinion of Kevin Nash since you brought him up?
Kevin was a great manipulator. I think Kevin got whatever he wanted out of you. I think Kevin's a pretty nice guy. In retrospect, very funny, cool to be around. I think he has I think actually we had a great match, probably the best match he had when he came back to WWE in 2002 for his hair versus hair match. And it was another one like the one that you and I had. I had some ideas, and just in the back of my head, I wanted to prove something, and I think back like, fuck, I remember that match being pretty damn good. So, you know, Kevin and Scott were the smartest guys in wrestling, man. You can't. You know, cut them down for totally manipulating the system. And hey, man, we're super over. Created one of the most classic angles of all time, and it would not have worked if they weren't involved. So,
right.
You know, like I said, Kevin could work when he wanted to, and I think the older he got, the lazier he got. But I think for a guy that big, he had some pretty damn good matches. And I just saw him a couple weeks ago at the Royal Rumble, and it's always fun to see him. You know, he's always got a smile on his face, and so I wish, actually what I'd like to say about all those guys is I wish that I was in the position now then. Because I never really got to know Kevin and Scott. You know, there was a big wall between all of those guys. Same with Savage. You know, I worked with Hulk when he came to WWE, so I got to know Hulk a little bit. But there's a lot of really cool guys that we never really got to gel with because there was a real
no, and you know, part of the mentality, Chris, was that, you know, we're stars and these guys aren't, and sometimes they acted like that. And if they would have met you now that you are a star, you probably would have met, you know, you probably weren't able to bond with them a lot better. But in their mind, it's like, who are these fucking guys? You know what I'm saying?
You know, yeah, I do. And like you bridged the gap. Like you got in with those guys, and Raven to a certain extent got in with those guys, but you were like the only two guys that were part of our gang that kind of crossed that line. So I don't have the same experiences that you have. I just think of those guys as being like fucking assholes, but I know they weren't. It's just, once again, it's just the way that it was there for everybody. And you know, knowing them the little bit that I know now, we all loved wrestling, and we could all go. And I think if those walls were broken down, we probably could have, like, I never once ever went out drinking with Kevin or Scott, or even with Flair, those guys in WCW. I mean, Flair was always friendly, but, you know, there was a different camp. There was the Arn Flair camp, and there was the Savage Hogan camp, and there was the Hall and Nash camp, and there was, like, our gangs, like, you know, Chris and Eddie and Dean and Ray, and you would hang out with us sometimes, or you know, Kurt Hennig once in a while would come hang out with us. But there was never, like, everybody go out together, because it wasn't like international trips in WCW either. And in WWE, that's why everybody hangs out. Internationally, in the same hotel, everyone's drinking with everybody or hanging around. We never had that in WCW, so there was really never any camaraderie between the 2 or 3 different cliques, you know?
Right, because a lot of those cliques actually had heat with each other for real.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know,
and that was part of the problem.
Yeah, I remember. The first day I sat down at the catering with Hogan, I think Nash, and they looked at me like I was nuts. Like, what do you sit down with us for? It was like high school, or it's like, oh, you know, just
right.
Up with the nerds in the corner, you know. And that's kind of how it was. So,
yeah,
like I said, all those guys in '97, '98 were different in 2008, 2009, and you know, like I said, can't really cut anybody down. I have respect for anybody, especially those guys, because they were at the top of the top and drew a lot of money.